Okay, it is 6 o'clock. Welcome everybody. A little housekeeping. By the way, I'm not working. Announcement. So, bathrooms are located in the hallway to the left. If you leave the auditorium, you would pass them on your way to the auditorium. The emergency exits, which is the emergency signs from the auditorium, are displayed at the entrance door, at the top of the auditorium, and one off the stage. If you haven't already, please sign a white sheet, attendance sheet at the table outside the auditorium. The meeting is being recorded by Zoom. Please note that the chat feature will not be monitored. Public comment will only be accepted in person. A link to the video will be posted to the website next week. It's a business meeting. The board asks for your cooperation to maintain quorum. Please be considerate and refrain from interrupting board members and other speakers, and obviously the board members vice versa. So a couple other administrative items. One, this is a committee meeting. It is not a board meeting, so therefore we are not going to be voting to approve anything tonight because it is a committee meeting, not a board meeting. Two, for my fellow commissioners, when it comes time for us to speak or have comments, I would ask that you please just raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you. So that way, hopefully, we can avoid hostile or interruptions against comments. So, with that, Libby, call to order, please. Roll
Commissioner Archambault.
Here.
Commissioner Lawson.
Here.
Commissioner Rapp. Here. Commissioner Root. Here. Commissioner Seaman.
Here.
Commissioner Cotto. Commissioner James.
So Commissioner Cotto is on the phone, and I think we need to go to allow her to attend the meeting. So I'll just do this. Do we have to do that by roll call?
Yeah.
Okay. So roll call to have Christina join the meeting. So moved.
We need to do
A motion to have Christina Cotto to join the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay. Discussion, no. Libby, if you would call the board.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp. Yes. Commissioner Root. Yes. Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. And Christina, I know you're on cell phone, so when it comes time for you to speak, your phone is, John's phone is next to him, obviously, so when you're ready to say so, do best I can to put the mic close to that phone so people can hear your comments. So, okay.
And I just want to make sure, if we can just make sure that everybody in the audience can hear Commissioner Cotto.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if not, we'll. Yes. There you go. Okay. So we're ready to roll. Additions or changes to the agenda. There is a change tonight. Justin Mishpia is in the audience. He has requested to be able to speak to the audience and to the board. So we are going to entertain that. And Justin, you'll be put in as the first agenda item on the
Do we need notice for that?
question and answer. Thank you. Okay. Communications.
Yeah, so to the commissioners, we've had a couple of issues in August. Certainly in late August, we had a matter on one of our beaches for which we were keeping a close eye on an individual who was significantly affected on that day. So that's one piece of the puzzle, and maybe the most significant piece of the puzzle. A 23-year colleague, 48 years old at the time, John Barrett, suddenly passed away in mid-August, and just a shock to the entire staff. And I know the board had some relationships with him as well. So our thoughts are with John Barrett and certainly with his family. There's also some materials in the packet as far as communications through publications as well as emails. So we do have all that information. We have received emails since the gathering of the material that is in your packet, and as we move through the emails that come in, we will add those to the September 22nd packet and just keep moving forward accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on communications? All right, so on unfinished business, so Justin, this will be your time, sir, if you would like to speak to the audience and to the board.
Thank you. You're gonna turn it up. Give me a button there.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm ready to prepare remarks. Winnetka Park District Commissioners, I wanted to thank each of you for your hard work these past 27 months on the Elder and Centennial Park project. I wanted to especially recognize the staff of the Park District as they have worked tirelessly while managing so many responsibilities. I am here today to request that you take action on the park project so the families and children of Winnetka of all abilities can enjoy the underutilized lakefront that is consistent with the 2030 Master Lakefront Plans. Let's agree to move forward with the Park District's proposed Elder 2 and Centennial 5 plans with some slight modifications, like including a dog beach, resulting in a unified Elder and Centennial Park with no louvers, no public planting pocket, and a dog beach. Importantly, if all goes as planned, these projects could be completed by next year. Many people have asked me why I want to move to Winnetka as a result of this process. They have said, why don't you just move somewhere else? I always consider all my options, but upon further reflection, I want to make it clear that my family will be long-term residents and members of the Winnetka community. You see, my wife and I want what's best for our kids, and we believe this community is the best in the country, and that's why we choose Winnetka. I don't know many of you, but I suspect you would be here for similar reasons. We believe our kids can get the best education here, have the opportunity to play various sports, and engage in a variety of social activities to enrich their lives. Many of you are right that we are outsiders to this town right now. I imagine, though, that many of you were at some point too. We hope to be a valued long-term member of this community for generations to come, and we choose Winnetka as our long-term home. As the landowner next door to the park, I want to get this project done. I know that each of you, as commissioners, want to get it done too. Today, I want to clear up any confusion about where I stand on the project. I also want to let you know I have reviewed all the plans that the Park District has delivered to the public. Some have asked why I didn't come to the prior public workshops. I did not attend as I wanted to give you the appropriate time and space to work your process. I believe now is the right time for me to weigh in. I'm in favor of the Park District's Elder 2 and Centennial 5 plans with some slight modifications, like adding a permanent dog beach north of the breakwater that I've already shared with Commissioner Root and Commissioner James. I believe there's a clear path forward here if the commissioners want to take it. I want the community to know that I've heard you loud and clear over the last few months. You asked me not to include louvers in the project. I agreed to that. You asked me not to have public planting pockets. I agreed to that too. You asked for a permanent dog beach at Centennial, and I have agreed to that as well. As many of you know, putting the dog beach next to my home, in many ways, negatively impacts my property given the sounds and smells that may follow. Additionally, I have also offered to knock down the 261 Sheridan House so that no taxpayer dollars are used for that initiative. In the spirit of compromise, I am willing to accept all of the above to get an agreement done. However, in order for this opportunity to move forward, the Park District needs to take action and submit agreed upon permit applications with the IDNR and Army Corps and get approval before we complete the exchange agreement. We are no longer in a position to say the community is unaware of this project and its details. At this time, we can be confident that everyone has had the opportunity to be heard, share ideas for the project, and review and consider various alternatives. I urge you to draw a line in the sand and say, let's take a vote and act on this project. As you are aware, the submission of a plan does not mean the public conversation on the topic can't continue. Each of you were elected to this role to represent your peers and members of the community. You were elected to hear and consider all of the available information. It is now up to the 7 of you to decide what is best for the community and the Park District. I ask you this question. Please tell me what new facts do you expect to learn in the future that would change your position on this project. I believe at this time there is nothing else new, and thus it is time to decide. I think we should all recognize a simple fact. If you as a board cannot make a decision and take the next steps promptly, then that is a decision in and of itself. As you are aware, the end results of this project will never satisfy 100% of this community. Elected officials have to take a stand and review on what they believe is best. That is the basic underpinning of the American way in democracy. Elected officials formally vote representing thousands of people. We all know that everyone deciding every issue will lead to paralysis by analysis. Each one of you have 1 out of 7 votes to make your voice heard. The individuals who are against this project are trying to slow the process down rather than debate the merits given its universal benefit to the community. A vote to not submit the permits is effectively a vote against the project. I urge you not to give in to those individuals using delay as their strategy, thus depriving the community of a lakefront consistent with the 2030 master plan. As a future member of this community, I have learned a lot over these last few years, and I'm more confident than ever this is where I want to raise my children. I have really tried to listen to the community that I want to be part of soon and understand its long history and values. Despite my personal views, I have offered to change the previously agreed upon and submitted design in meaningful ways to be more in line with the community's desires. In early June, the community sentiment in this room was love the project, hate the louvers. Then in July, when the louvers were removed from the project, there was a push for no public planting pockets. Then in August, when no public planting pockets were agreed on, there was a push to create a permanent dog beach. After so many points had been compromised on the comparison to the prior agreed upon plan, it is clear that some people who do not want this project for their own personal reasons are intentionally causing the goalpost to be moved to stall the project into termination. However, with these key issues removed, the time to act is now. The families of Winnetka want action, not more analysis. Commissioners, I call on you to submit permit applications to the IDNR and Army Corps to allow us to start the process of unifying the parks. As many of you are aware, time is running out. Let's rely on the coastal engineer experts and the park district staff to help with the final plan details. Let's agree on a unified Elder Park. Let's agree on a unified Elder Tail Park with no louvers, no public planting pockets, and a permanent dog beach. Vote to activate these public parks in a way they have not been used for decades. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, the next agenda item is Elder Centennial, so I will open up the board if they have any comments. Raise your hand, sorry. All right, I'll start. I just want to. Oh, sorry. Justin, thank you. A while, guys. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments, Justin. So I'll start. I heard what you just said. I appreciate the fact you have come here to kind of say what you would want to agree to. So these are words you're not going to want to hear from me. So I did hear you say that you want this exchange to be contingent upon getting a permit first before you do the agreement. Personally, I disagree with that. I want to get the exchange done, deed over, done. In terms of the dog beach, yes, we want to have it. I didn't hear the word perpetuity, but that's not something that this board can do. We just can't do that in perpetuity. We have no reason why we wouldn't have a dog beach there. It's been there for 26 years. I think people would follow me home if I voted against the dog beach. We're prepared to do that dog beach. We're prepared to do a fence of some kind with a gate so that people can have access beyond the dog beach to keep the dogs on the dog beach. So that's my 2 cents. Anyone else have comments?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please do, Dave.
We got a lot of work to do. On design. And the more I talk to you about it, I think it's one thing to look at these on paper, and I must admit, going down to the beach gives these drawings a much different feel. Elder 2, Centennial 6, I still, of the options that were presented at the last meeting, I believe that Elder 2 to me was the best option for many reasons. But when you go down to the beach and you look at Elder 2 and you look at the size of the breakwater, it's just much too big. That arm or hook is quite substantial. And last comment is, listen, I actually love Lloyd. I think Lloyd was a great job, but it's a different beach. It's a boat dock. It's more, as I've used with other board members, it's a more industrial feel. I just don't think that Elder Centennial should have that industrial feel. It shouldn't have as much rock. It should be more natural. I don't know what that engineering solution is, but I know that rock has to be a part of the solution. I'm hopeful that we can, in relatively short order, come to a design consensus on Elder and Centennial, but with less rock and more of a residential beach feel.
David, while I have you or while you're speaking, so any comments to Justin's proposal?
I voted in favor of the property exchange free and clear. I would still only want to do the property exchange free and clear, meaning no impact on design. I would only also want to do that if, because so much time has passed and there's been some debate about certain things, but I would want to do it with new appraisals, new plats, and I would want to do it with respect to maybe perhaps some of the communication that's in the packet that has questioned some of the Illinois code around property exchanges. But I want to do the property exchange. I want to unify Elder and Centennial, but I want to do it free and clear.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
Welcome to an actually very, can you hear me? Okay.
You might have to turn it on.
Got it. Testing? No. Okay.
It wasn't intentional.
It's okay. I got a big mouth. Everyone knows that. Justin, welcome to Winnetka. We feel that you are most welcome here. And as far as an outsider, I've only been here 4 years. I'm still an outsider to some extent, but I want to just make a point. This board has been willing to do the property exchange for over 2 years, not quite 2 years, nearly 2 years. We're ready. We're waiting on you to set a date for closing, and then we are ready to exchange deeds and do a transfer of title. There are other members of this community since the 2-year process who are less enthusiastic about it. And the reason they are is that they believe that truly the Waterfront 2030 plan never ever envisioned that this community would give up lakefront. Not ever. What they believed was, and what the plan actually said, was doing a property acquisition. So there's great differences, and these differences have grown during the last, basically, 2 years. My question to you tonight is whether you would consider making a gift of 261 Sheridan to this community that you are coming into, and whether you would agree to forego the 70 feet of Centennial. I ask you to consider this. I think, no, I'm sincerely asking you to consider this. Because I think that if that gift would be considered, and if you'd be willing to do it, you might find that there is suddenly great harmony within this community. If that is not within the realm of possibility, and I understand you're a numbers guy, comprehend that, then I would ask you if you would be willing to sell 261 Sheridan. I don't know if it's even feasible, but perhaps there would be a group of philanthropists in this community who would step forward. And then I would also ask that you forego the 70 feet of Centennial. To me, I agree with you that if you can't make a decision, that's a decision itself. But for this commissioner, the decision is, are you ready to transfer title, go to closing, and swap the properties, which is what this was all about. Thank you.
Cynthia, did you? Okay, that's it now.
Good evening. Yes, the mic is on. Mr. Ashby, I do want to welcome you to Winnetka. I certainly concur that it's an absolutely wonderful place to raise your children. We moved here when our oldest was in first grade, and it has been a joy every day that we've lived here. And I think that when you are in place in Winnetka, you will realize that your neighbors here in this room, all around you, will be your greatest assets as a family here. When you're not seeing your kids, your neighbors will be there at the moment to say, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to ride your scooter across the road. That's certainly been our experience, and I wish that for you as well. I think that there is continued support for the property exchange, free and clear, as a simple land swap, as others have talked about, for the unification of the beaches. I think Commissioner Root had some good points to consider further. And I know that there's great eagerness on your part to resubmit the permits as they were with a few changes, but it is also important to, as a board and as a community, come closer to consensus. Certainly we recognize that not everyone will be happy exactly, but at this point, I feel that the community is still very divided and there's still a lot more consensus building that can happen. I certainly share the comments made by Commissioner Archambault and also Commissioner Seaman about some of the design features and some of the learnings that we've had through the process in terms of really promoting beach access. And we have heard how important that is to the community and also preserving the views. And that's something that as a board, we need to continue to take seriously. So I definitely appreciate your comments tonight and definitely welcome to Winnetka. I look forward to having you be one of our neighbors as well.
It's weird. It's on now. Mr. Ishbia, thanks for coming. It's great for you to be here. We appreciate you taking the time. Elder 2 Centennial 5 is certainly something I can get behind. I heard loud and clear, no louvers, no planters. I know the Park District can determine steps. The concept of knocking down the house at 261, geez, that sounds good too. I recognize that, or I would at least imagine from your point of view, time is of the essence. You've got other things to do, and for the past 27 months, you've been talking to representatives of this park district and others trying to accomplish something that I think directionally was intended to be a really great thing for our community, so thank you. Much like Mr. Edwardson, I don't know if he's here today, he's been an active participant in these conversations. I recognize and can appreciate that Mr. Ishbia wants to know what is going to happen to the property right next to him as he creates this land swap. So I understand, or at least I certainly appreciate why we'd like to see approval from the IDNR and the Army Corps. I still view this to be an incredible opportunity for our community. And I'd like to believe that we are a lot closer than many would believe. The concept that somebody is willingly open to taking a dog beach next to them, that's pretty amazing. That has not been our experience. In my 5 years, probably 20 meetings a year, probably on average 3 hours of meetings. So in 300 hours of meetings, dogs probably consumed a third of that. The only thing I would say, and I've been supportive of dogs and the dog beach, the legality of having in perpetuity a dog beach, I know nothing about that. But the one thing I would suggest is, if it is possible, I would sure love future board members to not ever have to deal with that. And on the flip side, enable and commit to the public that they will always have a dog beach. And we'll never have to go through an exercise like this. I credit Randy Whitchurch for mobilizing he and his fellow friends. They've done an outstanding job of communicating their preference for a community amenity. And they've demonstrated the importance of it. So I would say, why not? And I will continue to press that and see if it's something we can do. But I agree with Justin. I think we're coming to a head, and we're getting really close to the time to take action one way or the other. And we each have votes representing the people that we are and voted represent. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, Cynthia, go ahead. Yeah, no, that's where I was going. Christina, do you have some comments?
I just wanted to say a couple things. I know that since our first listening session on July 2nd, which was 3.5 hours, there's enormous interest and enormous energy around this, and also an enormous amount of misinformation. And I am grateful that Mr. Ishbia himself personally clarified a lot of pieces of that. I would like to clarify from the Park District's perspective that there are no other additional ancillary agreements or issues being considered. Our goal is a free and clear swap, which I think we all support. Number one. Number two, if a dog beach becomes part of the equation, I think that's a win for everyone. Maybe less so for Mr. Ishbia, but there was a dog beach when he bought, and besides, it's sort of neutral for him and a win for us. I also want to say, I think everyone who's come to the listening sessions, everyone who's come to the open houses, everyone who got involved in this process way back in April when we first started our outreach, and those of you who have joined the outreach effort later. So I think we're really getting close to honing in. I personally am repair the beaches, protect the beaches, and ADA access, and then we get to Elder 2 Centennial 6. And I stand ready to take all feedback and input from all citizens. So I hope we can move forward. Today is not a voting meeting, but I hope we can move forward on September 22nd.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you. I could take a really long time to try and share with you all the information that I've assimilated. I moved to Winnetka in '73. That was the first time I moved here. So I do have a long history with the community, and I've seen projects proposed and die to the detriment of this community. And when I agreed to support this exchange agreement, I did so knowing of other failed attempts. The failed attempt at a land swap that Mr. Claude Ricard initially proposed. The failed effort referendum
to acquire the property outright. And so understanding that and knowing the difficulty of raising $6-7 million to acquire the property when we, the Park District, have an annual budget of $13 million and have so many competing priorities for our capital. It was my considered opinion that the exchange agreement was a marvelous opportunity to combine these two parks, a goal that has been part of the village's agenda for 52 years. I still support the swap, and I support it in the manner in which it was originally envisioned, a very clean exchange of title, with the understanding that we would collaborate in the future towards the design of the break wall. I agree, there has been a great deal of discussion over the design, and I also acknowledge that there's been a tremendous movement on the part of this board and on the part of Mr. Ishbia to accommodate many of the most pressing concerns, the most recent of which is the obscuration of views. There's been ongoing dialogue as to the design and to the height. But the efficacy of stone versus steel is irrefutable. It dissipates wave energy and holds sand. So what we have designed at the north end incorporates much more than just the coastal engineering aspect. It replaces a 75-year-old stormwater discharge pipe and a 100-year-old storm sewer that is a direct discharge into Lake Michigan. It incorporates input from the village engineer, the village consulting engineers, the MWRB, the IEPA. There's a tremendous amount of work that has gone into developing the plan for rerouting the stormwater discharge into the North Groin. North Groin, as designed, makes extraordinary sense in that it pre-treats that stormwater discharge and pushes it further out into the lake where it can be dissipated. I also know that the urgency is around Elder. The steel revetment, the steel break, or the steel break wall at the shoreline protects the bluff. If we didn't have that steel, if that steel hadn't been placed back in the 80s, we wouldn't have Centennial. We'd have a situation like Lloyd, where we had a much more urgency. But we do have damage to the improvements of Elder, thus the sense of urgency. The vision that was created during the Lakefront Master Plan was for two uses: swimming and non-motorized marine paddleboards, kayaks. That vision's been modified. It's been adapted to incorporate a dog beach. There's 1,000 feet of property from the south property line of Centennial to the north line of Elder. Contrast that to 515 feet at Tower or 600 feet at Lloyd. There's 1,000 feet. There's room enough for a dog beach at the south end and a swimming beach in the non-motorized beach. But as we learned a couple of weeks ago, there's a very high degree of importance to have vehicular access to the beach, not just for maintenance, but for life safety. Get emergency vehicles down there. We also understand the importance of ADA access, and Centennial is the only location in Winnetka, by virtue of the bluff height and the length of Centennial, that we can get an ADA access path so somebody in a wheelchair can come from Sheridan Road all the way to the lake. And I still support the unification of beaches and the boardwalk and the access to it so people of lesser ability can enjoy the lake. So a lot of change, a lot of movement, a lot of need to proceed with this plan. There is support on this board for the exchange. It should be a clean exchange. And Justin, I hope you will trust us that we will incorporate the necessary elements to keep dogs at your beach.
And as I said to you before in a meeting last Tuesday, that we are going to be supremely concerned with separating dogs next to swimmers. The Dog Beach Committee already considered that a tower. I want to do it in a permanent way, one that will stand the test of time in the winters of Lake Michigan, and one that will also not endanger children who might be playing on that swimming beach, or not give them the opportunity for access into that dog beach without a great deal of effort to secure access as we have today. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We have to solve that dog beach separation on the north side from our swimming beach, and we should solve it in a similar fashion to Mr. Ishbia. It is his property to sell. I'm fully supportive of this, but I also agree that we should do the exchange now. I know the alternatives. You know the alternatives. They take time, a lot more time in conservation. I also know that there is a credible threat of litigation to block the exchange. I'm very disappointed by that. And I also know that this board can cure that with the consent of the board and Mr. Ishbia. This is a deal that should get done. It's for the betterment of our community. It's tried and failed twice before, other means. We have a man who has generously agreed to donate property, and he's generously agreed to pay for the removal of the house. That's the choosing of this community. And he's also previously suggested that he might be willing to even help pay for some of the improvements to the property. I don't see this opportunity coming again. It's one that we should act on.
Thank you. Okay. I think that's completes that agenda item. Next agenda item, proposed board approval process for Elder Centennial improvements. Cynthia?
Yeah.
There you go. We got one in driving through.
No one. No, I'm going to take 3 whole hours for everyone's maximum enjoyment.
You get 3 minutes.
I'll talk very slowly. So in our last 2 meetings, we had talked about kind of defining or talking about our approval process for large projects. At the request of Commissioner Seaman, I had put together a proposed motion for our September 22nd meeting to talk about our approval process specifically as it relates to Elder Centennial, just being respectful of the fact that we've spent close to $600,000 on this project with not as much to show for it as we might like. So I have drafted the motion and wanted to engage in some discussion with other board members to make sure that we are all working in harmony and that we are correcting some of the shortcomings of the previous go that resulted in us changing course so that we are building consensus a little bit more. So just going through the motion point by point, the first point is that we do need, as a board, a summary by the executive director and staff of the work products and costs by the vendor for the completed work through June 6th that identifies specifically what work was completed, what work can be reused for the new plans that we're considering, and what costs to move forward with any plans that we've identified for further consideration. So that includes both the beachfront improvements as well as some of the park plans and bluff restoration components. I think it's important that we do have a little bit more detail around it instead of literally just one page to go with. You want to go through all of them, or do we want to talk point by point? Okay. Second, I think that we need to approve by board approval by vote of the subsequent vendor and consultant contracts for design engineering or other consulting work prior to further project expenditures on permit application, construction oversight, stormwater engineering, civil engineering, landscape architecture, block planning for all the vendors and consultants where we've already hit the $25,000 threshold for this project. So we have all seen summaries of the costs, so I think that it's important that we have a view as other boards do, with an approval process before we continue to spend money to be sure that we're spending money in the right direction. I would also suggest that even if we have a satisfactory relationship under policy 5.19, that we are encouraged to advertise for proposals from other qualified vendors for additional work that is expected to exceed the $25,000 threshold, and that we have a proposal with fees in advance of engaging the consultant, and also that we are looking at their contracts. 3 project timeline scenarios should be presented to the board for discussion, including contingencies as well as optimal timing to secure favorable bidding and costs for construction. I know that we had talked about that a little bit last time in terms of, how the timing will work when we should go out, when we need to go out to bid. My sense is that we're behind. It seems like there's a lot of competition for the vendors because of some other major projects that are being undertaken in neighboring communities, and also the Illinois State Beach project. I think that we also need to have a formal board approval by vote of design plans with the cost estimates prior to application for a permit. This was a little bit of a gap with our last go, so I think it's important that we have that so that we ensure that we are going in the same direction. We don't need a unanimous vote for that, but I think we do need a vote to confirm that we are in sufficient agreement. The permit application should be reviewed at a board meeting prior to submission. That was also a gap last time. And then obviously the board approval of the winning bidder for the bid process for construction. That's a requirement. And also, I would like to include in my motion that project costs for all the consultants and vendors associated with this project are reported on a separate monthly dashboard summary for future board meetings. And that we are encouraging current vendors and consultants to be submitting invoices on a monthly basis so that it is not a surprise at how much we're spending, or a surprise during the voucher process that we have costs for things that were not on our radar. And then obviously Vicki and I have agreed to undertake a further review of board policy, which will cover some of these items, but in the interest of giving a little bit more attention and being able to work effectively together as we move this project forward, as everyone has expressed a desire to do. That's my intent of putting something together. Comments, thoughts?
Well, that wasn't more than 3 hours.
Go ahead, David.
Sorry, I should go back.
It's amazing we actually got Lloyd done. That's one of my first thoughts. And actually, I think it turned out great. But I'm fully supportive of this. And today's a perfect example. Because I get texts from 2 people, hey, what are they doing on Elder and Centennial today? I'm like, well, I don't know. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I'm supposed to know. I'm not the executive director, and I don't work in the park district. I'm a board member. I don't know what's going on in every park. But for this project, because it has so many eyes on it, understandably so, to keep the board informed, to keep, more importantly, the public informed, we need a different process that is, more transparent. And the board has a bit more involvement in it. So I'm fully supportive of it. Cynthia, thank you very much for putting this together. I know with a lot of work. And I'll let others comment.
Other comments? Christina, do you have any comments?
I just want to say I really appreciate Cynthia as a commissioner because she's super diligent and super disciplined around process and transparency. And I think it's moved us forward in a short period of time. It may be a lurching and painful fashion and necessary fashion. So thanks. Apologies to the staff. I think it's been stressful, but I think it's been necessary. And I think it's, for me personally, I think it helps when people get find things on the website. Thanks.
Any other comments from commissioners on this agenda item? Eric?
I would just add a quick comment, despite my family's opinion, I do not work for the Park District. And so in my 5 years, what I have always done is relied on the executive director and their staff to do nearly all these items. With the exception of the board approval design plans, fully on board. But with the experts that we have on staff, permit application review, construction review, dashboard's a good idea. I am relying, as the rest of the community is, on this wonderfully talented staff and great leader that we have to do this work and to share with it and report on this. So I would just caution, in the name of progress, how far do we need to get into the weeds on some of these details and keep the high level items that are board level appropriate definitely in touch with them. To David's comment, I do not know what's happening at any of our facilities at any given time. But for all the years we've lived in Winnetka, the Park District has executed all the events and activities that my family's been involved with flawlessly. And so I would just hesitate to be delivering this back on the board in the spirit of trying to let them do their job and get the job done. Keep us board informed. Thanks.
Any other comments? Emily?
First of all, thank you for your work. Thank you for your diligence. My God, when you go to work on a project, you drill all the way down. I think that this board has come a long way since May in our effort to communicate with the public and to be transparent. This proposal, in my opinion, is a huge step forward in continuing that process. And I don't view it as the board getting down in the weeds. I view it as the board having the opportunity and the public, because my hope would be that a lot of this would find its way, poor Molly, to the park website. But it would be a way for us to continue to communicate so everybody who cares to know, and there may not be that many, but anyone who wants to know knows what is happening. With respect to comments that I've received in the last year, I've received a huge number of complaints. And one of the biggest is, where are you on your competitive bidding process? Why is it that I don't see RFPs going out for work? Well, I think that we have done a good job on RFPs, but I think perhaps we could do a better job. And as we know, we have financial constraints. There's just no way around it. We do. I've always viewed competitive bidding as an excellent exercise to see what you can do as far as cost on projects. So Cynthia, thank you so much for all your work, and thank you.
Good more? Okay. So, Cynthia, I agree with you. This is policy manual type material. So instead of debating it fully tonight, I'd say when we're getting to that point when we actually have time to go through the policy manual, which we need to do, it's a great topic to do that time. So thank you for putting that together. That's a lot of work. And we should take it seriously and certainly look at it, and we're going to look at it from both angles. So I want to be respectful of the staff, who I sincerely believe do a great job at doing their best, get competitive proposals, do the right thing, come to us with the right things. It's, I have done this for a living for 35 years, so I don't think we usurp processes as people might think we do on this stuff. We don't. In terms of getting more exposure to it, again, that's the kind of stuff we can certainly talk about so that we can act as a board and not try to do the staff's work. Well, that's my comment. Okay. Sweet. Well, I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead. Not a criticism.
I'd like to make a couple comments. I think that the process is very important. And I just want to note that the selection of vendors, professional consultants, was properly done prior to either Commissioner Root or Commissioner Graff being on board. this process started more than 2 years ago. We are quite fortunate to have a very talented landscape architect and land planner, Scott Perez, who lives in the community. He donates his time. He charges for his staff time, but he donates his time for the work that he does for the community. We're also very fortunate to have Charlie Shabika, a longtime resident of Winnetka and most knowledgeable. Charlie and Shabika Associates have done upwards of 40 projects up and down Lake Michigan. Contrast that with some other professional consultants that have done maybe half a dozen. No one has more experience working on these waters than Charlie, and we benefit from his expertise. We also have civil engineers that have spent a great deal of time and collaborated with outside consultants who are working on behalf of the village. So the selection of professional consultants and to go out and rebid after all of the accumulated knowledge, all of the prior work that's been done, I think would be an enormous step back, because in professional expertise, you can't rely upon another person's work. We will be spending great sums of money for people to redo what's already been done. The design, that's what's in discussion here. As to the soil borings that were taken earlier today in Centennial Elder, that contract was approved last March. That information is necessary for any project, and it won't change. We're determining soil type, depth of sand, depth of clay, and other pertinent information so that the structural engineer can take the geotechnical engineers. There's a lot to this. There's a lot more to this project. So I would urge this board to respect the work that's been done by competent, committed professionals. Yes, let's revisit some of the design elements. Yes, let's debate the aesthetics, but let's let the professionals do what they do best and deliver the current plans, knowing that we have full faith and confidence in our work.
Cynthia first, please.
I would just like to make a couple comments. I have reviewed lots of board minutes, surprise. And for Lloyd, actually, we did very similarly follow this process. There may not have been a formal board vote on everything, but there was certainly board discussion documented in the minutes on each of these topics with an indication that there was some agreement. There was discussion about the design. There was discussions about alternatives to the design. There was discussion about the bidding process. I was unaware, Warren, of what you said about a contract to approve those soil borings last March. So if there was one, fabulous. We can check.
The total cost of soil borings was $10,500, so it was not a board approved or an item, well within the responsibility of the executive director. Soil borings that were taken, six at Elder, 4 at Centennial, and 1 where the shaft would drop for the stormwater, all as it relates to the access road going down and as it relates to the ADA pathway. So as it was instructed by the board for staff to further the engineering, I want to make sure we have accurate data so we can make sure we're driving to those models that will give us more accurate cost analysis as we drive toward that plan. And this is just a phase that needs to be done and a step that would have to be done regardless what option, what design, all that information is current and will be option or information that we can use for numerous projects for numerous plans.
So which vendor was it?
DSE Corporation.
Okay, good to know, because I think that they have not yet appeared on our vendor list, and that'll be a new one coming up.
About the borings for us previously at the previous workshop, so we've been a long-standing member.
Okay, and you said it's a TSC?
Yeah.
Okay, no, they haven't appeared on our, they have appeared for $500 previously in January. So, okay, no, that's helpful. And I think it's helpful for us to have that information and track the cost. But I just want to emphasize that for Lloyd, we did go through all these checkpoints in board discussion. There were some votes, and definitely with the focus with the community, I think it's important that we have them. So I plan to put this motion forward at our next meeting on September 22nd to see where we are and make sure that everyone is aboard. Thank you. Very quick point, again, thank you, Cynthia. Like Cynthia, I've done some research. I've been looking at other park districts. I've been looking to see what they have on their websites. And what is proposed here is not unique. Park districts who have won the Gold Star Awards, they go through a process and they post it. They actually have graphs where you can see where various projects are at various times. I realize we're not a large park district. I realize that our staff right now is working very, very hard. And one of my recommendations to our executive director is that he consider putting together a robust staff plan for possible new employees to assist those of us, the staff, that are, quite frankly, they seem overtaxed. No wonder with everything we've gone through in the past months. I know that we are looking forward. We're not looking back, but I'm going to look back for a minute. On June 9th, this board voted to withdraw permit applications. And the reason for that vote was that the majority of board members present were not familiar with what had been filed in those applications. Eric, I don't want to do staff's work. I have no interest in doing that. That's not why we're here. We're here for policy. To me, this is policy. At the same time, I think that we as commissioners need to know what's going on. For example, the call on sword boiling, I got that this morning at 7:15. That was the first call on what's going on. So it's helpful to know, what's happening, not in granular detail, but in broad perspective. And then finally, it's interesting to note that most of these districts also include in their contracts a specific clause where the vendor agrees that they have no conflicts of interest, and also a clause that there is no collusion. To me, that's just good governance. So again, Cynthia, I fully support what you're proposing here, and look forward to seeing it on the agenda for the September 22nd board meeting. Thank you.
Just one last comment. Listen, the compromise might be similar to what we've done with finance, that Christina and I have been part of this financial advisory group, and been a bit more in the weeds on the finances. We enjoy it. And then if another board member comes to us, we have a conversation. And so there could be a compromise to have a two-commissioner committee, because it doesn't sound like Eric, and I understand Eric, he doesn't want more information. I get it. There are others that want more information. Warren is obviously very familiar with a lot of this stuff. And maybe there is a committee level group that can be formed, that if they want more details, they want more information, once a month, we'll sit down with Costa for 30 minutes, and we dig into the details. But that it doesn't gum up the work of the board. Just a thought.
Christina, you want to add anything? Christina, you there? You want to add
I'm
anything?
here. I'm right here. I would say I agree with David. We need to take a unique approach to the finances, because this is something that Jordan spent a lot of time on. Cynthia's very skilled and very knowledgeable on policy. I really support that. As I've said before, I support the policy program. I support the committee piece. I think transparency is never wrong. But I think we've made a good shift, although I find no fault with how we've done things historically. We need more open and more accessible to the constituents. That's fine. But nobody, I don't planning board at the park district has done in various. I don't believe that anyone in the park district has finds to that phase. In fact, I think quite the opposite. There are quite a number of very hardworking people on the staff and the board who are good faith operators and enormous commitments, with enormous commitments personally and professionally to the park district. And I want to recognize them, I want to thank them, and I want to say, please err on the side of goodwill when you're evaluating these efforts. All things going forward, I think Cynthia has proposed are positive, but we also need to think about how we can staff some of this stuff because it's all risk.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, let's move on. Kemper Sports contract, who wants to comment on that?
So we continue to work through the terms and conditions of the proposed document. We're at the point where Perdurma is reviewing the insurance elements of that document. I also have a request in for the Kemper Sports insurance coverages, so I can look at both of those programs and work then with Commissioner Cotto and Commissioner Seaman to ensure that the insurance elements are properly addressed as well as the terms and conditions are properly addressed. We have a call that I was working to secure for next Thursday based on the general counsel's availability for Kemper Sports. I know that's not the best timing for the board, but that's where we're at with Kemper Sports. So it's moving. It's just a couple more steps to go with Commissioner Cotto, Commissioner Seaman, and then once we get to that point, we'll present it to the board for review and final approval.
Sorry, when did you expect to be done?
So it's all contingent on the terms and conditions. We have one core issue that needs to be resolved regarding employment practices, liability, and related issues. So that's going to be a matter to be discussed next Thursday. I was able to get Kemper Sports agreement to be available late next Thursday, so that was literally right before this meeting. I haven't even vetted that with you or with Commissioner Cotto. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. So once we get through that meeting, assuming we can resolve some of these open issues, then we'll turn the page.
Okay, any other comments on Kemper Sports contract?
I just want to say thanks to John Peterson, who has enormous historical insurance expertise and liability management expertise, for really chiming in an expert way and continuing to try and push this ball up the hill. So thanks for that.
So what you're saying, it's an uphill putt? I'm just kidding. Okay, alternate golf course improvement projects. No stuff? Sorry to get you on the hop there.
Nikki, thank you. As we continue the stormwater project as it relates to alternate golf course improvement projects, staff sat down today with James Bernal and Mike Strand, along with Rick Jacobson from Jacobson Golf Course Design, the architect on the project, to review the adjustments that are going to need to be made to the 18-hole course per the U.S. Army Corps delineation. So we have reviewed those today. Those have been drafted. Mike and his team from Strand are looking at the cost implications that will ensue. Some will come back as a credit. There are others that are going to come back as a charge. Those have not been approved yet. Those will come back to the board along with the alternates for the golf course work as noted. So along with project for the golf course cart path system and alternates that were identified and reviewed previously, those will come back for another final round of revision as they've been updated. Staff has had an opportunity to sit down with the village team to reduce expenses on the front side of that project where we could, as much as possible, taking into consideration all the costs associated with that project at very, very high levels, all the way down to the very small minutiae of the project. So working through that collaboratively, we should have something back here, hopefully for the 22nd, and then ultimately to get approved in the month of October, when we'll bring it back to the board for a final committee review and then a final vote in October.
So there's about $1.3 million, this is about $1.3 million of capitals that we're going to be responsible for, which include the cart paths as well as some items that we thought the village was gonna pay for it, but the village is not gonna pay for it, about $1.3 million total, right?
Well, $1,417.
$1.4 million. Okay, and then you're talking that there may be additional costs to the park district. That what you just said?
There were 2 bridges identified, one that could not be replaced, in lieu of the land bridge that we had made to go back in, but that was identified as wetlands. So we'll have to replace that bridge because it's in disrepair. The number 9 bridge going from 9 green to 10G, as most of you might understand or seen, that is due for replacement, as well as the conveyance on number 12 to get around that area to keep a continuous car paths out of play. That was also identified as a potential bridge, and then in turn will incur another cost.
So I know you're gonna come back with estimates, but is that a couple $100,000? 150?
If I assume from the HIP, I would say probably about 150,000 for those 2 bridges, taking into consideration the credits that we receive from the reductions on other items that we're not going to be partaking on at other areas, of course, due to the delineation act.
I think that 150.
In theory, that 150. Correct.
So the $1.5 million, $1.6 million, but the park district's gotta come up.
Any further comment on that? All right, new business, Board of Commissioners Management Platform, JP?
Yeah, so the staff has advanced the process to ensure that we have a better platform for uploading the Zoom content to a website, to a dedicated website. So thanks to Molly Crowley, Libby Baker, Costa Catullus, Kyle Bird leading the charge. There's been an entity identified, Diligent Community. We're just alerting the board that we have acted upon what the board's asked us to act upon. So we're in the process of moving forward with Diligent Community, and then we'll also get a soundboard, a new camera. We're in the process of identifying the right camera, microphone, et cetera, to ensure that we have better sound and better video for the overall process. So nothing to be voted on. We just wanted to alert you to the fact that it's moved forward, and now we need to execute. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get to that, so that it's running smoothly, but getting closer.
So this is an audio-visual assistance. Does it have anything to do with what we talked about in terms of minutes? That the automated, so it would also include that Libby wouldn't have to take 25 pages of minutes.
But we still have to work on that. That's a piece of the puzzle, but we will load the minutes and related board content onto this single site to include the Zoom session and the improved video and the improved audio. So we're working on trying to find an individual to take on the minutes to support Libby. We've looked at systems that essentially record the voiceover, the voices during the course of a meeting, and both Libby and I believe that system, while interesting, it actually creates a bit more work for Libby as opposed to what we envisioned it to do.
Any other comments on that? Okay, we're going to move on. So thank you, all of you. You've been extremely patient. Now it's time for remarks from visitors. So unless this is your first time coming to a committee of the whole or board meeting, so if it is the first time, I'll read through all this stuff. I think the rest of you know. Remarks from visitors, your opportunity to address the board on any issue. We call upon to step up to the podium, speak clearly into the microphone, state your name for the record. You don't have to say your address. And please speak to the board directly. Please do not remove the microphone, remove the podium, because we're trying to video this. They are positioned for the video camera. Keep all comments under 3 minutes. This is not a question and answer forum, so please do not expect a response or answer from the park board this evening. If you prefer to share your comments in writing, you may use the comment cards, which are available near the sign-in sheet. Any park district staff will accept your card to be shared with the board. So I just want to add to it. We say this at every board meeting. We're really asking for your indulgence to do your absolute best to keep it to 3 minutes. I know that's hard. We are going to have someone who just kind of nudge me to say, okay, it's 3 minutes. So we'll ask you to conclude your comments. We really don't want to badger you to say, would you please conclude your comments? So I will say this, if you have written your comments down, please, at the end of the 3 minutes, feel free to give them to Libby or any one of the board members. We will make sure they are on the website and so recorded. So with that, any visitors who would like to have some remarks? Randy, go ahead, go first. 3 minutes, Randy. Reader's Digest. No, as soon as you clear your throat.
Oh, man, it wouldn't be a meeting without me, right? Okay, first of all, thank you for recognizing the real importance of that. Real important.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you for recognizing the importance of a dog beach to this community. Now, I have a couple of comments in a couple of areas. First of all, I don't want to be the skunk at the garden party, but it's hard for me to imagine why Winnetka really needs another swimming beach at Centennial. Our current beaches, Tower, Lloyd, and Maple, count them 3, are underutilized and they're understaffed. I was down to those beaches on beautiful summer weekend afternoons several times this summer, and there was a wide open beachfront. When we throw Elder Lane into the mix, we will have more than enough beach for swimming in this community. We don't need another swimming beach on top of that at Centennial Park. It's ridiculous. We're spending money on something we don't need. Secondly, we're having a hell of a time staffing the beaches. Labor Day weekend, before Labor Day weekend even arrived, you guys shut down Tower and Maple for Labor Day weekend. Good grief, how in the world are we going to staff Elder and Centennial and Lloyd and Maple and Tower? It ain't going to happen. The season ends, realistically, when the kids go back to school. That's the truth, because all the lifeguards go back to school. Imagine that. Okay, here's another fact. The current plan for Elder 2, Centennial 6, I believe costs something in the range of $12.6 million, which I believe is $5 million more than we have in our cash reserve. So we got to borrow more money. How are we going to get it, and what are the taxpayers going to say when they see their property taxes going up? For debt service, we can't afford to spend money on things we don't need with money we don't have. Open Elder and leave Centennial Park alone. Now, lastly, that was my prepared remarks. Now, to Commissioner Root's suggestion, to you, Justin. By the way, welcome to Winnetka and welcome to these meetings. You really don't need 70 feet at the south end of Centennial Park. I think you've got a lot of land on the beachfront. The dog beach, by the way, doesn't smell and is not noisy. So I would urge you to consider Commissioner Root's idea to donate 261 to the Park District. I think the Park District would find money in the budget to erect a statue for you if you did so. So, thank you very much.
Sorry, Rick. We'll get to you next.
Hello, Commissioners. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Chase Toomey. I'm a 10-year resident of Winnetka. My wife and I raised our first grade and fifth grade daughters here in the village. At this point, my daughters have probably taken every program that the Park District has offered, everything from summer camps at our open beaches to sports programs, and they love it. I followed the beach project from the sidelines like most Winnetka families with school-aged children. Working kids keeps us very busy. When I talk to my peers about the beach project, I typically get one of two responses from them. These are folks that are not coming to these meetings. At best, they're confused on why the new beach project is taking so long. And at worst, they're pissed that the entire project isn't done already. This project has dragged on long enough. I'm here to ask you to call a special meeting and make a decision on the beach project. Decision making is the job that you've all volunteered for. Combo, dog beach, and human beach sounds great. Please get it done. Thanks for your time.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Carroll. Better? Sorry. My name is Brendan Carroll. Live at 20 Fox Lane. I've lived here for 10 years. My wife's family has been here for over 100 years. And I mentioned that because I was questioned on the way in by another resident whether or not I should be allowed to speak or have the right to speak at this community. So if you'd like to speak to me more about my history in this town, I'm available anytime you want, ma'am.
Oh, yes.
That's okay. No, it's not your turn to talk. Thanks. I'll be brief. I echo what Mr. Lusson said, that the committee needs to make a decision. I'm no expert on what needs to be built, how high or how low, what it needs to be made of. I think you guys are all experts and have enough people that can decide that. But it seems like there's been enough information, time to make a decision. Also, in my opinion, any rational person would never agree to swap the land. I don't think any of you would either if you didn't have your permits approved to build what you wanted to build. So to ask for that, I think is just a non-starter and just completely irrational. So I would hope that doesn't become the gating factor to get one. It seems to be an amazing project done. Also, from what I've read, it seems like Mr. Ishby has acquired additional land since this process has begun, and it seems like he can build his house with or without this land swap. So I just hope that's not the case. And I learned today from Mr. James, and thank you for the history lesson there a little bit, that I guess the town had the ability to buy this property a while ago and failed to do so. Well, given the publicity that now surrounds it, I don't think the voters will forget, I know I won't, if the committee fails to act this time around and swings and misses yet again. So I got a dog, and dog beach is great. It'd be awesome. I can't speak for how much it's going to cost, but it seems like you guys have the information, so I hope you just make a decision soon, because it seems like, I know if I were Mr. Ishby, at a certain point, either it's me or my wife yelling at me to start the construction on my home. It seems like he can do it. So thank you very much for your time. Would also, getting harassed on the way in here by other residents is something you guys should be aware of and think about when people want to come represent their community. Hello, my name is TK McKay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. This is my first time at one of these meetings. It's been a good education for me to listen, so thank you very much. I would just second the comments from the gentleman, Mr. Toomey, before me. I too am a parent of 2 young kids. I grew up in Winnetka. I also lived in Chicago for about a decade prior to moving back to Winnetka, and I know that a lot of my friends who are considering moving up to the suburbs, they have pets, they have families, and certainly having a dog beach. I know that there's tremendous expense to this, and I appreciate everyone's concerned about it. I think over the long term, having an opportunity for dogs to go to a beach makes Winnetka that much more appealing to folks that want to move up here, young families, and I think that benefits everyone in terms of home values going up, and just having Winnetka continuing to be the amazing village that it is. So thanks for your consideration. I hope that you come to a decision soon. Yes.
My name is Mark Walters. Sorry, like that. My name is Mark Walters. I moved here over 30 years ago, and my wife was behind me. My daughter was behind me as well. She was 3 at the time. We've always enjoyed the park system in Winnetka. My daughter especially. We used to love to go to Centennial Park, mostly because that's where the dogs were. And that's what she loved, and we've always had a dog. It was always strange to me if we couldn't get a spot in Centennial, we'd have to go over to Elder and walk and drop the family off, and then they'll walk around to Elder. And I never understood why there was a house in the middle separating these two parks. I learned a little bit today. Thank you for that. I always thought it would be really neat to have one contiguous park, but thought that that homeowner wasn't willing to give up the idyllic opportunity to live on the lake and have a park to your north and a park to your south. And why would you give that up? So I thought that was an opportunity that we, the town, would ever have. I now learn that we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity if we accept, this plan proposed to make one contiguous park. And it's not just the beach for me; it's the greenery as well. Thank you, Commissioner James, for pointing out 1,000 contiguous feet. For me, that's 3 football fields. 3 football fields of greenery on Sheridan Road in the North Shore of what has to be some of the most expensive real estate in Chicago for sure, and maybe the country too. And there's an opportunity for us to do that, for you to do that. Mr. Ishbia has enough land, as the prior speaker said, to build a dream house for he and his wife. And we learned he's not going to wait forever. So if we don't act now, that opportunity is gone. He's going to build his house, whether we do a swap or we break out, understand breakwaters and all that stuff, which really, but there's an opportunity here. And it'd be a shame if we look back, 5 years from now when he's enjoying his very large house on Lake Michigan, that we didn't take advantage of this opportunity to create 1,000-foot contiguous park on Sheridan Road. And please act. And, hopefully we can get something done here, some way of compromise. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is David Mulligan, live at 1080 Pelham Road. I'm a 25-year resident of the community and an avid user of the parks and the beachfront. And I thank you all for your diligence and your time. I think the people I talk to this community, in this community, differ somewhat from what some of the other gentlemen have said. What I hear, first of all, was a great deal of interest and enthusiasm early on about the vision for consolidation of these properties. And then somewhere along the process, and I have not been a diligent follower, there was a loss of trust, unintended as it may have been. There was a loss of trust, where there was misinformation, and there's been a process now of been trying to rebuild that. Justin, it's good that you're here in person, okay? And trust starts with understanding there's a person, not representatives of someone that this, frankly, didn't play well in the community. The community felt it might not be dealing with authenticity and a relationship with someone who really has the community's interests as hard as well as your own. I think it's good that there's been compromise. There's absolutely been clear compromise, and we appreciate that. And I feel there's been good faith on both parties to do that. However, at this point, goalposts have not been getting moved. This is a very complicated process. It's a very expensive project. At $12 million, my understanding is it's twice as expensive as Lloyd Beach. This is a taxpayer-funded initiative. And as a result, while I understand the sense of urgency, it's a lot of people that are trying to get up to speed on this. And the people I talk to haven't had the time to follow all the details, but are concerned that there is a due process that goes through. And it sounds like we're close, but I know there's still a lot of people that feel very strongly that full information hasn't been vetted. So I appreciate the efforts to say, let's build on this momentum of transparency. And I do urge that we continue with that, continue to get input from the community, because people are a little worn down with they still feel strongly about the fact that they haven't felt that the information has been as transparent throughout as they would like. So thank you for the progress that's been made.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Kapil Chaudhary. I'm a small business owner in the Chicagoland community, and I've been supporting this Elder 2 to Centennial 6 project from, this is my first time meeting and supporting this, and like Mr. Ishbia, I'm currently a resident of the city of Chicago. We deal with a lot of things there, and all of my fellow business owners are mostly either moving to Florida or the North Shore. I support restaurants in the community with my business, and I am hopeful to remain on the North Shore, and I'm supportive of the project and everything that you're doing. And I too ask that you take into consideration and take this vote. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Paul Gaynor. I'm an attorney with the law firm of G&R Public Law and Strategies. I've been retained by Rob and Chris Schriesheim to represent them in this matter. I know I only have 3 minutes. I'll leave you with some paper. The exchange agreement violates the public trust doctrine. It's illegal. Now, the exchange agreement as we sit here right now is no longer legally binding. The district's own lawyers wrote a letter saying so. And several of the members of the community have been asking, do you think the agreement is still in place? They've not been able to get an answer to that question. I will leave a memo, an extensive memo today on the public trust doctrine, 17 pages long. Incidentally, in preparing this memo, I read the so-called white paper that was submitted, I believe, by, as best I can tell, by Mr. Ishbia's lawyer. It was written by them. And I'd like you to put the two side by side as you're reviewing them, if you would, please. The other matter, and I don't have this in the memo, but I will submit a letter to this effect. I believe that there's some concerns about the adherence to the Open Meetings Act in these proceedings. So regularly, I've read all the meeting agenda minutes. I've read the agendas, the meeting minutes, the closed meeting minutes that I can, get my hands on. And you rely upon the exception. And by the way, these exceptions are supposed to be very strictly construed. They're not expansive. And it's always the exception in all the meetings, including the agenda tonight, by the way, that it relates to it's the provisions 5 and 6 relating to the purchase or sale of real property of the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. That's 5. And then the other one is the setting of a price for the sale of lease of real property of a public body. Now, I've looked at the cases on this, say strictly construed. You can't be talking about design. You can't be talking about anything but these two limitations. And we have serious concerns based upon the minutes alone that not with intent. I think everybody has the best of intent. They don't question that at all. But that you've gone way astray of these limitations. And it's a great concern. I think it relates to kind of I've come to a couple of meetings now, and I think the speaker maybe before me spoke to the lack of trust and transparency. And my mind is ringing too, and I am way aware of that. And I just have a couple. It might be just another minute. I just want to say one more. Yeah, please. Because here's the thing. Without an announcement, and you knew Mr. Ishbia has a ton of interest here. I'm not questioning his motives or his interests, but you guys just put him on the agenda. You met with him last week. You didn't know he'd be here speaking, and he ends up on the agenda, and then you limit people and representatives to 3 minutes, which I understand. But the other thing that you would have a real problem with in the law, and then I'm done, is you make conclusory statements that you can satisfy 70 ILCS 1205/10-7B, and that's any park district owning or holding any real estate is authorized to convey such property to a non-governmental entity in exchange for other real property of substantially equal or greater value as determined by 2 appraisals. I appreciate that people think those appraisals are outdated and should be, but this is the real kicker of substantially the same or greater suitability for park purposes without additional cost to the district. Without additional cost to the district. Already there's been additional costs to the district with this exchange. Already. I'm going to submit another memo on that, and I will wind up. That's all I have to say, and I appreciate your time. Let me just end this.
Anyone else want to speak? Back, please. Mary. I think that way first, Mary. I'm sorry.
And now they're both sitting.
Okay, at least I can touch this today. Thank you all very much for those of you who are behind me and who came again, or if you're new here tonight. Thank you for all the park commissioners for continuing to listen to us. I always forget that. Susie Schreiber and I got dragged home from the Evanston Hospital some years ago, and I've lived here since. That was by my parents. But anyway, Cynthia's report is excellent. It really comprises how the park board and the park district operated during the 1980s and the early 90s. And I would encourage you to go forward with what is recommended in Cynthia's report. I also would like to request that when you do tablings or you do presentations to the public, that you don't just come and bring a bunch of paper with plans 1 through 6, plus those extra plans that were provided by some of the citizens, which are actually quite thoughtful, and just dump them on the table and say, oh, it's plan 2. Oh, which one is that? And people are coming around and they don't understand. Display it. Do a good job. Represent the park district well when you're tabling. You're all quite capable of it. You've got a great staff, and it can be done. So thanks very much, and I certainly echo what the last speaker said. I approve of his comments. This is a step in the right direction. Mary Garrison, 350 Ridge.
I've changed my thoughts on what I was going to say. I'm a citizen, though, with some knowledge of the responsibilities of the board members to the public, as you understand, you understand it as a board who you represent. I don't quite understand the process that this board has gone through, ignoring the citizens' request. Lack of transparency did reign. Executive sessions were an every meeting affair. I requested the board to put the board packet at the library. Maybe this will still be done, but there are people who do not do the techie stuff, and they would like to have access to the information as the rest of the citizens. But as of today, that board packet has not been put at the library. And the village has all their packets there. 3 football fields. I hear that talked about tonight. 1,000 feet. It's all good. But if we did not sell or swap this piece of property, we would have 1,070 feet. We'd make it a bigger stretch of land. For a project of this magnitude, the board should be united and all board members on board. For a project of this magnitude, this board should go to referendum to the public and make sure that they know what's going on. The other village and the New Trier and District 36, they go to the vote. If they're turned down, then they go back. But I don't believe we've been turned down twice for this project. We went to referendum once, in my knowledge, and we did listen to the public who said they didn't want to spend the money. We cannot block the riparian rights of citizens on the waterline of the beaches. And I know that you know to follow the Park District's policy and procedure manual. For 100 years, Winnetka Park District has held their heads high and made the Park District what it is today. Winnetka Park District is known nationally as one of the best around for its size, mainly Lake Michigan. And we need to keep it that way. I think it's a dream to do the consolidation, but not under these circumstances. And I hope that it goes that way. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak? Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Mary.
Joanna Carrotzis. Joanna Carrotzis, 476 Providence. I just want to say I support United the Beaches, but when I look at, getting back to talking about design, looking at option 6 for Centennial, or the last option for Centennial that everyone seems to be supporting, I think it's like a big mistake. I mean, your 1,000-foot beach is now becoming an 800-foot beach. And as much as I love dogs, I used to have a dog, but 170-foot run for a dog, especially the bigger ones, isn't that satisfying. And it's sort of like this compromise. Like, I don't have an answer, but the compromise isn't that, I don't think, satisfying for anybody. So, that's all I have to say. So, good luck. Look at design problem.
Right. Anyone else want to? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So I'm Lauren Wolfish, or the daughter, because I was referred to earlier by my dad. I have nothing prepared. I grew up here.
State your name, please.
Lauren Wolfish.
Okay.
I grew up here, went through the New Trier school systems. I came back here to raise my 2 kids and my dog. I really think the project would be great for the family. I know a lot of my friends who also have young children feel the same way. We just looked at the plan, so it's very exciting and a fun place for the kids to play. And I would urge you to take this to a vote and bring some unity back to Winnetka. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Kim Mulligan. I've lived in Winnetka for 25 years now. First, I want to express my appreciation for all that all of you have been doing. These meetings are very routine and long,
if you would take the mic, because some people are on Zoom and trying to.
Yes, and I have been the person on Zoom who couldn't hear anything. Is it better? My husband and I submitted some comments to you earlier today. I hope you'll take them into account. It was encouraging to see Mr. Ishbia here, to hear some of his recent positions on what he's willing to do. I think this community has only heard part of where this project stands, and I think that taking this to a referendum makes a lot of sense. It happened in the past. I think it would enable us to see what the final deal is that's being proposed, rather than something that keeps changing, or maybe somebody's proposal being made here tonight but not in writing. I think the community deserves to see exactly what we're getting involved with. When the initial proposal came out for the land swap, it seemed to make an awful lot of sense to me, but then as I learned that there were a whole lot of contingencies put on it and some exceptions to our ordinary process of having a landowner go in on a permit with the government agencies. I'm not really sure why these exceptions are being made. I understand we've pulled back, but there's been a lot of movement that makes it pretty difficult for the average resident to follow. So I would also urge consideration of the very real point that was made that the beaches are not being used to capacity as it is, that staffing is an issue. I do go to the beach pretty frequently, and the beaches are not really used at capacity. It's my understanding, I could be wrong, that provided we have one ADA accessible beach in our community, which I understand we do, that we don't need to necessarily go to the additional expense of creating a ramping system to go down. And I also have enclosed in our letter a photo of the beach from 2017. It is beautiful. It is one of my favorite beaches. I look down that beach towards Wilmette, and the wide open space there is beautiful, and putting in the rocks and boulders, I appreciate that, there's science to that, but I would urge the least intrusive approach to that. Okay, thank you. I would urge the Park District to take this to the community, as it somehow in the past thought was important to do. I think it's still important, particularly with the divisiveness that this situation has created. And I would ask, as I've heard, that we not be referred to as a vocal minority. If this is a great deal, it will pass easily in the community through a referendum. We have an election coming up, and I would urge it to go to referendum. We're stewards of this property. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience?
Good evening. My name is Chuck Downey, 968 Elm Street. Appreciate you all letting me speak once again. Last times, I apologize for the repetitive appearance I made here. But I feel like I'd like to spend a little time talking about process tonight. I think processes are very important, and I would like to second Cynthia Rapp's initiative for strengthening the processes for overview of contracts that the Park District undertakes. I'd like to bring up a specific example, and that is my letter that I wrote on September 2nd was not included in tonight's packet. I don't know what the process was for that, whether the website was down or what, but I sort of feel compelled to include my letter, at least a summary of it, and that's really written to request a true workshop. And I'd like that workshop to review the plans that were introduced on the 25th of August that are under yet again revision by Mr. Ishbia, thank you very much for coming. It's great to meet you. I've heard so much about you, and I'm glad to see you here in the audience. Foremost, for the several reasons for this letter is to request a workshop. And the reason for the letter is the change in the previously advertised 25 August workshop meeting to a special board meeting without announcement at the meeting or explanation of the implications of such a change. Before the meeting, Scott Ferris, one of your consultants, indicated to me that he had advised the boards to announce at the beginning of the meeting that it would not be a workshop per se. In other words, he went on to say the workshop would include interaction of attendees concerning large hard copy documents in which the attendees could exchange ideas and scratch and talk about how differences in the plans might be compared and contrasted. Initially, I thought that not having drawings on the wall would not prevent an exchange or detailed information, but I was mistaken. There was no interaction like that in the workshop as described by Ferris. The board had not been given any hard copies of my final analysis. During their discussion, there was not one single question asked of my plan or how I determined the cost. There was board interaction only with the 9 plans that were prepared by Lakota, not any of the plans that were produced by the audience. None of the plans and cost estimates were distributed or displayed to the audience in hard copy form so they could be compared as the board had in front of them. The audience was not given copies of the plans as was the board, nor were they asked their opinion about any of the 9 Lakota plans or mine. There were few to no questions relative to the line items and the cost estimates of 9 plans. Now, I'm hopeful, given the fact that we are facing yet another initiative and possible change in the plans, because I heard tonight that Mr. Ishbia said that there were some minor changes to the plans that were to be thought and considered. So I would hope that we would have a workshop, a true workshop, where we could look at the details and spend some time looking at the detailed cost estimates, because I think if the board needs to spend some $12 million in order to achieve this accomplishment, which I hope it does, then these are very important financial matters that need to be considered in great detail. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, Stephanie Garrity. Well, by now. I just wanted to bring up one. Yeah, sure. I just wanted to bring up one additional piece. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up because we live across the street from Centennial. We love Centennial. We use that park a lot. There are a lot of families in the community that use it. I see cars driving by every day, and they slow down because of the breathtaking views of the lake. I see Dr. Lee walking there every night, speed walking with her husband. People taking family pictures there. My kids learn to ride their bikes there around the circle. So it's just a really special place where people like the quiet. And I guess I would just like to convey that I would like that circle to stay there. I would like it to be a quiet park. I like all the trees there. I like the benches. And since I come to a lot of the meetings and I wasn't asked what my plan wanted to be, I would like to fix up Elder. I'd like to leave Centennial as it is. I think the Ishbias would also like it to be a quiet park. It's really quite peaceful there when you can hear the lake and people just enjoying the quiet time. So I would just like to say that my last point to you is to leave Centennial, the park portion of it, alone. Thank you.
Hi, Ted Winnetka. So, I am not politically correct this most. Okay. Oh, really? Okay. Hi, Ted Winnetka. So, I have three things that I want to comment on. First, I am at a loss as to why we are continuing to talk about any sort of land swap deal based on any sort of prior agreement. That agreement has long since passed. I also believe that the property owner of the land between the two parks really didn't have the villages or the park district's best interests at heart when we outbid the park district on that piece of land and paid well over market value. I think that there was ulterior motive there, and I think that at this point, we should just forget about it, leave that pot there. There will be plenty of opportunity to get that lot in the future. I doubt there are going to be many buyers for that lot at the price that it was purchased for. But the bigger issue that I want to address is I am concerned about the way this has all been discussed. I hear people coming up here and talking about how they're members of the community. The property owner to the south has been quoted as saying that, they won't do anything that impedes on their privacy. And the park district seems to believe that fencing off part of the beach for a Winnetka dog park is somehow appropriate. All of these things, I believe, speak to a misunderstanding of what the lake is. The lake is held in trust for the citizens of the state of Illinois. A family living in Cairo has as much right to the beach in Winnetka as does anyone else. And when we talk about how we're going to use the beach, we are missing the point that the beach isn't ours, okay? The private property owners out, they want privacy. They have every right to put up a fence parallel to the shore along their property line based on village code. Privacy. Dog park, I'm sorry. Anything that blocks public access to the beach, if you want to try to put up a fence, in 1882, the Supreme Court made Chicago Railroad rip out like 300-foot pier that they installed 30 years later when it was determined that the city of Chicago had no right to give the land to a private company. I'm sorry, we had a great dog park. People liked it. We put up fences. Those fences should have never been there, and they should be removed, and they can't be replaced. And speak to the greater issue that we seem to consider this our beach. It is not. It is beach held in trust for the citizens of the state and perhaps more generally the citizens of this country. And to talk about doing things to the beach below, in my opinion, the ordinary high water mark, which I believe is the true demarcation for this beach, because Seaman v. whoever in 1850, as decided by the Supreme Court of Illinois, was flawed on its face, is a problem. And so I would ask that we move forward, redo the parks however we want, not worry about the land swap, make sure we take all the land to the south up to the property line, forget about a dog park, and then at some point in the future, the lot will become available again, and we will be, I had to my folks 15 seconds. And at some point, that land between the two parks will become available, and we will have the opportunity to repurchase it at that point. Thanks.
My name is Katie Stevens, and I think you probably never thought I'd do this, but I'm sticking up for all of you. It's been 2 years. Mr. Ishbia has had 2 years to make a swap for a swap, which is what your deal was. And the 2 years is up, and you want to push it forward. And this is $12.6 million of taxpayer money. And I, for one, want Centennial and Elder to have sightlines, more than anything. I took 4 commissioners on a boat ride. It was a 3-hour tour. I did it appropriately, 1 or 2 or 1 at a time. And what we saw is less is more. Every one of you that went on that tour saw that the majority of beaches that go up and down, including Kenilworth Beach and many of the private beaches, have groins. That's it. So I'm proposing that we look at Chuck's plan. It's far less expensive. It would put the stormwater where you want to put it, on the north side. But why would we put the people on the north side swimming? Why wouldn't you put the dog park on the north side and the people on the south side where the beach is 90 feet, Mr. Ishbia? We now have a 90-foot beach, which is not in the flag survey, approximately. And there was no beach in that first flag survey at all. So I'm not sure it's an equal swap for swap, but that's up for you all to decide. I think you talked about new plans of survey. The dog beach at 550 feet is about a $34 million dog beach. I would say that's a little preposterous based on the cost of $3.2 million to $4 million for 70 feet of property. So I'm suggesting, and I took David Senior down and we looked at the beach, and all the people that wanted to be on the beach were on the north side of the beach. Nobody was at the tiny end of the beach. So you guys don't need to make any commitments on dog beaches and decide what the dog beach is now. You don't need to make commitments on stone. We don't want stone. We want a view. This is a residential neighborhood. This is our beach, our land. I will not allow taxpayers to be dictated what our land is used for, how, what walls we'll build, what fences we'll put. This is ours. And I want to say the last thing, and I want to leave this with you, and I mean it, and I meant at the time I talked to you all the very first meeting. This is our beach. This process has been backwards. We have done Mr. Ishbia's planter pockets, planter walls, 300-foot break walls, drawn up plan over plan over plan, and none of the plans have been what the public had wanted. There was a gentleman that sat over here one night, and he said there's three choices: do less, do the middle, or do a lot, or whatever. And you all like that idea. But we've never looked at the less is more. And the groins work. The pier at Elder has been there for 80-some years. And the stormwater pipe goes under it. Mr. Dowdy suggests it goes into the clay. Okay? I suggest you do groins, put a pier on the north side. It's $4 million to do the north and the south side of Chuck's plan. I don't want any stone.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Carol Rasmus. I've been a resident of Winnetka for 9.5 years. I keep wondering, with the great job you did at Louis Beach, why we need to do another beach down at Centennial that's Centennial Elder that's way underutilized. I know the staffing's been a problem, but it's the fact that the people aren't there. Why would we spend thousands of dollars, taxpayers' dollars, to do this and create yet more swimming beach that's not used? I love Randy's idea of keeping the dog beach. Thank you. I know stormwater pipe is an issue. I know things need to be redone in that area. Do that. Spend the money on that. Leave the other. Put it to a referendum if it needs to be. But I feel like the majority of the residents are not being heard. And if they are heard and they want to go ahead and spend our taxpayers' dollars with this, they should know how underutilized our beaches are right now. But hopefully Lloyd will get more and more attention because it's a really good facility. Thank you for doing that.
Anyone else? Mr. Mueller. Go ahead. Yes. Justin, this time 3 minutes.
I appreciate all your guys' comments. I support. Yeah, Justin, talk to us. I appreciate all of your comments. I think the issue here is some people believe in America that everyone gets to decide everything. We don't vote where stop signs go. We don't vote where count plates go. We elect people, and they hear all the information. It's their job to know everything. It's not every citizen's job to know everything about it. You guys are really intelligent people. And I don't know what happened in the past. I know at least for 3 months there's been a lot of focus on this and a lot of things on the websites. Everything's been available. So you decide what you want to do. It's really very nice. There is one point here that I want to clarify so you guys understand. I do hear you on the exchange agreement. Close it first and then do this later. Just so you understand my view on this. Before we even discussed any of this, there's conversations of let's not even sign an exchange agreement. Let's get all of our stuff first, and then we'll do the exchange. We didn't have to sign first and then close later, like a lot of houses are. You can close simultaneously. There were part district policies and rules that had to go through. You had to submit things in public newspapers, writing, had to get appraisers. And so it was told to me, we had a process we had to follow. And I accepted that. I trusted people. But I also said, it's very clear in the document that in my sole discretion, we won't go forward unless I get all government approvals. I didn't know the word IDR before we started. I didn't know who Army Corps even was. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that I was worried that we would go forward, and something this would happen, and for all I knew, an Indian tribe could lay claim to that land, so you can't build here. I was planning to build my house on part of that land as part of home fair exchange. I would never have been signed agreement to go forward if you said I didn't have a way to make sure I could build what I was planning to build. My intended use was core to this swap. And so to say it was a simple swap, that was never the case. It was never a simple swap. It was, I had an opportunity to make sure that I got what I thought I was getting as part of the deal. That was part of it from day one. The lawyers were in the room, and there's if you were a lawyer, there are some lawyers in the room. So a term they're called sole discretion. It was given to me as part of the contract. It was not a simple swap. It was an agreement that I let you do your process, and we would close later. I was worried in between some government approvals I would need. It was the Village of Winnetka, IPA, now IDNR, Army Corps, whoever would say, hey, you can't build right here. Otherwise, I just waited and said, no, we can't do any of this. Let's just wait until we get the approval first. So I was trying to follow your process. I was trying to be thoughtful, sign what we need to do. And so that's where the exchange, people say it's a land swap. That was never the deal. It was always, I had the right to understand what was going to happen and make sure I could build what I was intending to build. And that's where I come from. You, end of the day, you guys decide. This has gone on long enough. You guys know everyone's viewpoints. So everyone's viewpoints are heard. Divide here. Elected officials, please elect. Please decide on here. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Ron Shreesan. Thank you for all your time. It's been a tortured process, and I appreciate it. But I appreciate your time and your effort. In my mind, and hearing everything, I think the contemplated property swap is ill-conceived, and I think it will result in the loss of a uniquely beautiful piece of lakefront parkland. I think the Centennial parcel is scarce, trophy-like asset enjoyed by the public for decades. But I also think that the negotiation process underlying contemplated swap, for whatever reason, including an inappropriate broad degree of confidentiality and the associated misleading nature of public communications, has essentially served to promote the interests of a private citizen over that of the public. I think all things being equal, the objective of consolidating the elder centennial beaches is a good objective. I've lived here 30 years, raised 4 kids here, 3 of them are lifeguards on beaches. In my mind, more beach is better. However, all things aren't equal. And Winnetka is on the losing side of the bargain in the contemplated property swap. First, the swap is in violation of the public trust doctrine. Lake Michigan Federation versus United States Army Corps of Engineers is the controlling case. Second, the agreement does not meet the criteria in the codified Illinois Park District Code, which requires any substitute property one be of substantially equal or greater suitability for park purposes, and be substantially, equal to or greater value, and be substantially equal or greater suitability for park purposes without additional costs in the district. And I think additional costs in the district is not just simply tearing down a house. It's every single dollar expense that has been expended to date in consideration of meeting Mr. Ishbia's various demands and designs, which then have been incorporated into our various permutations and it would include any costs expended in the future, anticipated costs associated with meeting those demands. Thirdly, the property exchange agreement is null and void by its terms. It's no longer in existence. It's lapsed. Under Illinois public policy, you can't have a perpetual agreement. Fourth, the process undertaken with a private citizen has been cloaked in inappropriate, broad layer of confidentiality, preventing required transparency. And fifth, the appraisals that you have gotten, first of all, are stale. And I could easily engage an appraiser to go through a litany of issues with the appraisals themselves. Putting aside all of that, I don't think there's a lot of disagreement actually in the community. I think people would love to have a larger beach. I don't think anyone wants to give up, or most people don't want to give up that unspoiled piece of Centennial to consolidate beaches that we don't need since we don't have a demand for them. So with that, I'm going to submit my letter, and I appreciate the courtesy of a response. Thank you. Thank you very much for all your work.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. We'll move on to, thank you, by the way, Paul. We're going to move on to Anderson Director. Big thing. Oh, we're going to grab that. Thanks, David.
So a few items. Platform tennis, just we're getting close to the finish line. Pretty much all the agreements that are required with the cell tower entities, with the Winnetka Platform Tennis Club, they've been terrific. Starting first and foremost with Chris Crone, with the Common Cross, right? Chris Crone is also a big supporter of the program, but Common Cross has been terrific. Coast has worked diligently, and he's one piece of the puzzle away from submitting the application for the building permit with the Village of Winnetka. So just an update, we're closing in on all the documents. There are about 6 different work streams required to get to the finish line, and we're right there. Happy to share with you all the details as you might want to learn those. Library Park, again, we finished the real estate sale contract in the IGA. We will have documents presented to the board during the September 22nd meeting. After the library also considers the content on their September 19th meeting, so that's moving along well. Thanks to Commissioner Seaman and Commissioner Cotto for their active participation there. Bike Winnetka, just a heads up, Bike Winnetka Fall Fest, September 24th. Thanks to Kyle Berg and so many of the staff members for getting that set up. And then legal expenses, David, I know you've asked for those. We're going to close in on the $60,000 threshold that we were supposed to alert the board, so we'll have that notably the September 22nd meeting for sure. I think once we get that next bill, we'll be at 60,000. So that's it.
Okay, board liaison reports. Cynthia. Thank you.
We'll be short, no update from D36 at this time, since we're close from our last meeting. At our next meeting on September 22nd, Kristen Coulter from the caucus has asked to be on the agenda to present the caucus planks. Out of consideration, I would ask if we could have her toward the beginning of the agenda. That would be helpful because they are actively also working on interviewing candidates for to support for the upcoming elections. And that's all I have. She'll be here at our next meeting. So thank you. What? Well, Nikki and I are trying to reconvene the Dog Beach Advisory Committee, and a number of our committee members are on holiday right now. So we hope to have an update at our next board meeting.
Any other liaison reports? No? Okay. Staff reports. Libby, you're shaking your head. Oh, okay. Costa?
No reporting this time.
Okay, Jim?
Just know we are working on the 2023 budget, and we'll have updates for you at the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Right. Yes.
Did someone maybe wanted to mention the capital commissioners coming?
Yes. So I probably have to check my calendar. Warren, I think you are up for a chat with Commissioner you and Colleen this Saturday.
Point counterpoint, here we go.
That was from 60 Minutes.
That's right, I'm an old girl, I'm an old
And so am I remember that. You didn't kill Patrick or, no, never mind.
What?
I can't remember who was which, Colleen, sorry. Okay, so yes, that's this Saturday, I assume at Pete's. Starting at? Farmers Market, sorry.
You make sure that we do that.
Okay. All right, thank you for reminding me. And then Colleen, Cynthia, you and I have one on?
Wednesday morning, 10 to 12 at Pete's.
Okay, this coming Wednesday.
Wednesday the 13th.
That's this coming Wednesday. Okay, right, 9:13. Okay, so if you come here, we'd be happy to see you. All right, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. So may I have a motion to enter closed session pursuant to sections 2C1, 5, 6 of the Open Meetings Act? Motion, please. Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? If not, roll call.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yeah.
Commissioner Root,
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman,
Yep.
Commissioner Cotto,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes. Okay, thank you all for coming. Hope you did well with the mic.
Be at Farmers Market. Farmers Market this Saturday.
That's it.
Love to engage dialogue anyway.